G'day, boys.
How are you there, mate? How are you? Welcome to Bougainville.
Unbelievable. How long has it been? 1 year now since we've last got together and waxed lyrical, and the Beatles have got
Wow.
us back together again. Fantastic.
Oh, don't you
And
love
nothing
it?
like getting the band back together.
Yeah, great. The Beatles have done it for themselves and for us as well. So it's a year ago and then.
That's
Or
right.
was it now and a year ago? And then.
Well, what did you guys think of this? Let's start with the Red album, 62 to 66. I'll start with Martin. What are your first impressions of it?
Oh, mate, it's like, the Beatles are part of the woodwork of my life, right? It's a structure you don't even notice, right? From being a tiny kid growing up. And this is kind of, one of the questions with remix albums and stuff like that is, are they just a curiosity? But with this one, I'm like, he's done something really extraordinary, and he's taken something so incredibly familiar and just made it vital again. It's like I'm listening to something completely fresh and new, but I know it inside out at the same time. And so to me, it's just fascinating. Um, and it really breathes new life into things that you think you know inside out. So I'm pretty amazed with it.
Yep. What about yourself, Wes?
I
Same?
totally agree. For me, when you listen to the earliest Red album, you just go, oh, this has still got the original mixes on it. And I'm talking about, I can't remember when it came out. It was pre-1993, maybe, somewhere in that vicinity. And it was, maybe you can just, add to that, Martin, but it's somewhere, might have even been
73.
earlier. Yeah.
73.
Yeah. And so on CD, it would have been 93. And I can compare those, of course, and I just go, I don't really want to listen to that sort of stuff. Like, I've been I much prefer the mono material of the Beatles. Not because I'm, just got a little machine here or something like that, but I much prefer it because it was vibrant to the 1965 or 64 mixes that came out on Parlophone. However, I'm now prepared to sit down and listen to some of the stereo mixes. I mean, so a bit of a convert here, and I think you are right that these are vibrant. They've done, some magical things instead of just sticking the bass and the drums in, a little corner of the audio spectrum. Now these are across the spectrum, and it just adds far more kick and relevance, and it does make the songs, in many cases, feel as though they were recorded today.
Yeah, in some senses, like you're listening to those earliest pieces, and it's almost like you're listening to a punk or a ska band. It's like they're standing in the room with you. It's now. It's really immediate and really vital.
Yep. And the other thing that's been going on here is that finally we have a picture of what is the correct speed to be listening to these tracks at. Like, seriously.
Please elaborate.
Well, every time a pressing was made, particularly in the vinyl era, it was recorded at one speed. Then there was a copy dubbed for somebody else. Then that wasn't necessarily exactly the same speed. The allowance was something like about 0.02%. And then I would go off to America, or I would come off to Australia, and we weren't necessarily exactly the same speed as what the Brits were.
So the engineers weren't calibrating their equipment to a common standard, is what
Not
you're
necessarily. We're getting pretty close. And then, so when you look at this 2023 recording, let's take Love Me Do as an example, and maybe that's an unfair one to be having a shot at. We've finally got a really wonderful stereo mix of the Ringo Starr version. When you look at all the other versions that are around, for example, on 2009, it's 6 seconds shorter, or rather 2009 is 6 seconds shorter. And I suspect that's because they used the Andy White version on Red in 2009. So 2023, they finally used the Ringo version. That's significant. When you go back to Please Please Me, the album, that's the shorter version again. So I'm guessing that's White. And then you've got Past Masters, Mono Masters, and they're using the Star thing. And then the American version, which is on One, for example, is 5 seconds shorter. And that's with Star again. But when you look at individual tracks, there's just slight discrepancies in speed between different versions of the Beatles stuff. So I'm kind of happy that we're finally getting here something which is, look, we might only be 1 or 2 seconds out, overall. It might be half a second or 0.8 of a second with some of the other tracks. But now we're finally getting this is the model we're going to use. Let's adjust everything else to this.
You're a radio programmer, aren't you, Wes? Fussing over split seconds. Fussing over split seconds. Amazing.
Oh, look. Sorry, guys. I've spent 2 hours researching that, and I went down a hole. Talk about rabbit holes. And I did it to most of the wonderful thing about where we are today, and with having all the CD versions, is I have the privilege to do that because I've got them all on the hard drive, and I can just go and compare them very quickly.
Right. Understanding of how these compilations came together was that they were thrown together at the last minute, because in the United States in 73, there were bootleg compilations called Alpha and Omega. There was a 4 LP set that was advertised on television stations around the country. And US copyright laws were not operating on a federal level, but on a state-by-state level. So it was all very dubious. And Alan Klein, who was effectively in his twilight of managing the Beatles, and they were about to move on from him, but he put one of his lieutenants, a gentleman by the name of Alan Steckler, in charge of dealing with this by creating a product, an official product, and putting it out through legitimate channels, and thereby nipping it in the bud. Well, and then of course Alan Klein, famous for his lawsuits, couldn't put out a lawsuit against a record label, but he could send writs out to the individual television stations that were advertising it. And of course they didn't have the resources to fight a legal battle, so they all stopped advertising this bootleg version, and these official The Red and the Blue compilations took over.
Okay.
There's a really interesting article about this in the latest Mojo magazine, January 2024, by a gentleman by the name of Tom Doyle. Well worth a read on some of this background.
Well, for me, boys, I'm always, like Wes, I'm the quintessential mono guy. If I want the power, the punch, the excitement, I've always gone to the mono, and I've always been super critical of the stereo mixes and tried to avoid them at all costs. It's pretty hard when you're trying to put some sort of playlist together, whether you're in Spotify or YouTube, and you're faced with the stereo versions of these. For me, it's been a positive thing for these new stereo mixes to come into play. Not only are we hearing stuff that's more aligned to my ears, but also giving me the impulse to share it with others, as in putting them into playlists, etc. So I'm really happy with it overall. And I'll be keen to hear what you guys have sorted out as your highlights of this particular CD, or however you're listening to it. Maybe Martin, you might want to just share some highlights that you found were really interesting on a track basis.
Certainly. In the past, we've probably done our top 5, but with something like this, it's like it's kind of impossible.
Yeah.
Because just they're jewels, they're gems, they're priceless. These songs, and for me, a huge revelation was the song I thought nothing of out of the entire catalogue. Love Me Do. It's never registered on my radar, but to hear it so close, and their interaction, that harmonica, to me, suddenly the song has life in it, and I'm intrigued by it where I never have been. So that one jumps out by a mile. A song that I've never thought of as a quality song, and I'm kind of thinking of it in the terms of, we know their rock and roll background and Little Richard and Chuck Berry and that sort of thing, and then of course early days they were recording songs from motion pictures and musical theatre, and I'm kind of picturing them trying to write a song for a musical, and love me do, strolling down the street, and because it's not blues, it doesn't come from the blues. It's like, yeah, this is kind of a song for a musical in a way, but again, not. So they got me thinking. They've got me into their world, and so amazing. Then, of course, the old Young Talent Time closing theme, All My Lovin', which Johnny Young brilliantly reconfigured as an easy listening, warm, fuzzy feeling farewell to his talent show. And to hear just, again, the energy and John Lennon doing the upstrokes on the guitar. And it's like, man, if that came out in 1998, you'd think it was, third wave ska or something. Put pork pie hats on them and, amazing. Norwegian Wood, Paperback Writer and those harmonies, Eleanor Rigby and the swirling strings, Taxman, Yesterday, Help Nowhere Man. Another song that never really registered, Got to Get You Into My Life. Just to hear the beautiful brass arrangements and the energy again. But on a personal note, one of my earliest childhood memories was I was 6 years old and I was with my mother in a cafe in London, and she bought me a cheese roll for lunch or for dinner or for whatever. And I'm looking out the window and there's a red double-decker bus driving past, and She Loves You on the radio. And she bought the roll, and we had a 1 shilling piece in the change, and she showed me and it said 1967 on it. She says, that's this year. So, of course, She Loves You came out a few years earlier. But as I'm listening to this, it's like the ecstatic, that high G that John Lennon hits right at the end when he's singing, It Can't Be Bad. And he hits that high note, and the backing vocals of the She Loves You, and then that amazing major 6 chord that they all finish on, just took me back. But also the ecstatic moment, just incredible. So, yeah.
So, Wes, what about your highlights?
Wow, I think the highlight is not a song,
Okay.
although I think it's amazing that in a spate of about 4 years, these guys went from Love Me Do to Tomorrow Never Knows. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
What an amazing set. I mean, that's the opener and the closer. of this set material. But in 4 years, that is how much music changed. And significantly, what Martin has done here in putting these together is that they all sound the same, in the sense that there's consistency of sound. There's the beauty of John and Paul, and the way that their voices just shimmer and shine all the way through this collection. And George's guitar work just pops all the time, rather than just being petitioned away in a corner, in the same way as I think that Paul's bass work was petitioned, and so was Ringo's drumming. And you just see how more coherent as you go through these 38 tracks, just how significant and more coherent, and they're just coming together in a significant way. This is how music changed. This is what this is really showing. But the beauty about Giles is that it's consistently brilliant in terms of the production level. So look, I just think, yes, I'll still enjoy the monos, but boy, do I love this, because it just gives me a new perception. And I'm looking forward to this same process, if it ever comes off, with the early albums, A Hard Day's Night, Help, Please Please Me, all that early set. I'd love to hear in the same treatment as what's happened on the later Kid and Caboodle, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, for me, boys, my highlights were totally unexpected, actually, because I found those covers. I can't believe how amazing those editions were. I thought, why did they put cover versions of songs into this mix? When I heard them, Twist and Shout, Roll Over Beethoven, and You Really Got a Hold on Me in particular, they were magnificent. They sounded fresh. The guitars were sparkling, the vocals were clear, and it was something that totally took me by surprise. And for me, it's as Wes was saying, there's a bit of a consistency thing going on. And This Boy was another one that that actually surprised me. No, not a song that I appreciated in its former incarnation, but yeah, I just think that they did a magnificent job on songs that I thought were, I don't know, secondary to what a lot of people would call the good stuff. Yeah. So that was the highlight for me. So I wanted to ask about the disappointing aspects of this. I suspect you guys didn't really find much to, I don't know, criticize, or even any particular songs that you might have thought didn't stand up to the treatment?
No, I'm very, very happy with the choice of material, and also the way it's just been put together. I just think it's a stunning group, although some of these songs were also on number one.
Right.
Which was remixed in 2015.
Okay. So the comparison between the Andy White and Ringo Starr version of Love Me Do, Wes in particular, because I know Martin's given Love Me Do the big thumbs up.
I'm going for giving it a thumbs up as well. And it's not because of Ringo's drumming, it's because of Paul singing.
Yes. And that's where I come into play with that.
Yeah.
Particular.
So that's just great, but it's still good. It's the version without the tambourine.
As I say, I had never given it undue attention previously, so to me it was a big surprise to find that I was intrigued at all. It's a tambourine, Andy White. Oh, really? Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, well, it was Ringo.
Ringo
Okay.
played the
Played
tambourine.
Yeah,
on the Andy White version.
There's a standing room in the corner of the room. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'll tap the tambourine.
Yeah.
Well,
What the disappointments for you?
Well, I had the disappointing feeling when I couldn't find Rain on there.
Oh,
Now, I don't know if you guys
I love Rain.
miss Rain,
great song. It's a great song.
but if you notice on disc 2, 14 of the 19 tracks come from either Rubber Soul or Revolver. That's 7 tracks each.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit heavy-handed, really, when you're thinking this is virtually a primer for people to get into the Beatles, and you get the half of each album thrown in on one particular disc.
Possibly overcorrecting for only having 2 of each on the previous
Where's the
version.
question to you? Given that you have good memories of when the Beatles first came out, are you still preferencing the mono versions, or are you going to be listening to these new stereo versions when you throw the Beatles on the old stereo?
Well, I'm going to listen to both now.
Okay.
I'm not migrating away from my mono set of the Beatles at all, because it still has a lot of punch.
Yeah.
But this has got much more punch, much more delight than the early 1960s and then remixes and stuff that were done previously. So I really like this, and it's a wonderful achievement. So all credit to everyone who's been involved in this. I've now got something else I can enjoy. So, but do I toss out the monos? No.
Hopefully you'll toss out the old stereos.
Yeah.
Because
he might have a lesson to teach somebody, and might be able to whip them out for.
Yeah.
Here's how you don't do it.
Yeah, you put the vocals on one channel and the music on the other.
Look, I never minded that at all. When I hear that on old Fleetwood Mac or old 60s Cliff Richard, and you hear the drums kind of in your left ear and you hear all the harmony vocals in your right ear, it's anachronistic, certainly, but I always found that intriguing. But with the Beatles, no, I've never dug into it in that way.
Why didn't the Rolling Stones do it that way? The Rolling Stones seem to have a much better way of doing their stereo than what the Beatles did.
Everybody did. Even Elvis. Elvis Presley's worst recordings sounded better than the Beatles stereo mixes. The movie ones. It's just ridiculous.
Let's do the clam.
Yeah. And how about this? What's your impression of how this AI is going to take off, revitalizing, if you want to put that in inverted commas, other artists? What's your prediction of what's going to happen? Because AI is taking over by the looks of it.
Well, I don't know if it's AI so much as it's the human is assigning the task. It's not like an intelligence going, oh, what can I do today?
No, but
per se.
That's the process.
Yeah. Look, there are old things with a friend of mine who passed away, and I'm like, we've got these dodgy old cassettes of him singing, and is there something I can do to retrieve that? And and ultimately it's like, well, who would listen? But
how much does it cost to do it?
How much does it cost is the other question. And there are software packages on the market already that you can say, yeah, look, take the guitars off, take the drums off. I just want the vocal here, or I just want the guitar part. So that obviously the Beatles and via Peter Jackson have got access to far stronger technology than I have, just going to the App Store. But I just think it's amazing that but once again, if you're looking at demixing or isolating primitive recording parts to reuse them, where's your marketplace? And the marketplace is aging. So I think it will probably hit its peak in 10 years and it will die in 25 years along the, or it will find other uses that we may not imagine just yet. And part of
What
that.
about what Wes said earlier, Martin, about it sounds like it was recorded today. Maybe it's targeting the younger people.
Well, it's yeah. Look, I think one of the genius things that the Beatles have done over the last 15 or 20 years is, as I say, make sure they have refreshed, revitalized material, of their old material every November. So they're constantly keeping their, and my sister's like, where's Linda Ronstadt, or where's James Taylor or Carole King, incredible legacy artists, who, if you put a foot wrong on YouTube, if you sing a cover of their song, down comes the hammer, copyright strike against you. The Beatles have done an incredible job to maintain and even improve their place in the marketplace. And and I think this is the beauty of what this stuff is, that it will hopefully filter to younger age groups and create new fans and new following.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, Martin. I'm thinking that this new process is going to revitalize a lot of artists with a view to bringing in a younger demographic.
As long as they have the budget to get their own marketing machine working to inform people, because it's all about being informed. And the old ways of hyping a product aren't necessarily working tomorrow, aren't necessarily working today. So the Beatles have got that machine working really well, and I think the new song Now and Then,
Which
where,
we'll be
where
discussing on our next program.
yeah.
Uh,
And so I won't say a lot about it, but I will say that I think that what that effectively did was, hey, the new Beatles song coming, just open the door a crack, and you're just like, oh, who's this? And it allows these compilations to step through, which are the genuine, vital product.
Yeah.
So I just think Now and Then allowed the promotion process to click into gear, whereas just to say, hey, we've refreshed the best of packages, people might have shrugged. Whereas in fact, the best of packages are the product, are the thing that's valuable.
I think it's very interesting that we talk about AI at the same time as other artists are just re-recording their earlier albums. And so we're at a time where one can refresh a memory or redo the past, one using AI, just going back and doing remixes, or just, Time Magazine calls Taylor Swift the person of the year, and very smart girl, very smart woman, and what she's been able to achieve, and then just going in and re-recording the entire package.
Yeah.
And so multiple ways of doing it today.
Chris Rea, of course, did that years ago with his New Light Through Old Windows best of.
Yeah.
Re-recorded all his songs, and it's like, I wish he'd do it again. Refresh those songs again, because the core songs are great. The production isn't always shining the best light on them, and I'd love to hear that.
Agreed. I love Chris Rea, as you know.
Yeah. And the possibilities of using this technology, as we know, a few years ago, the Universal fire, which destroyed so many master tapes,
Yeah.
and sometimes maybe people need to use whatever's to hand to get access to their own key works.
And you look at what we have here. Even in Australia, there's the Universal overseas, the M7 material,
Right.
Powderworks, because of the fire that would happen here, and with a lot of stuff from Judy Stone and
Yes.
all the people who were part of that label. Family was another, and
Midnight Oil were on
yes,
Powderworks to start with,
yeah. And then you look at other groups like SCRA, the Southern Contemporary Rock Assembly. Recently, we had meaning we had the Australians had the opportunity to go and listen to that entire album, that the SCRA album, but it started off as a vinyl rip.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like it. It is just so good.
Oh, man.
Warren Barnett did an amazing job on that.
Well, this is the thing. If you can say to this tech, hey, look, these are the extraneous noises. This is tape hiss. This is ambient noise, right? Go Rover, go and make mincemeat out of that. Get that off the plate. Huge possibilities.
Yeah. Cool. So overall, boys, the thumbs up goes to the 62 to 66 remixes.
Yes.
And we'll be back shortly at some point to record our impressions of 67 to 70.
And sadly, they're not as positive.
Have a good one, boys.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Wes.
We'll catch up with you soon.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.